Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening, and welcome to the New to Wrestling podcast After Dark, where we get into a lot of the wrestling goss, mostly based on Dark Side of the Ring on Hulu, and a couple of other things going on in real life, day to day. We just really get into it. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about the one and only Macho Man Randy Savage and the First Lady of the WWF, Miss Elizabeth. I am so excited to get into this because this is once again like another kind of love story vibe like we did a little bit like
Yeah,
last
yeah,
week
yeah.
with Tammy and Chris. So I'm really, this was like very parallel journeys in my opinion.
Yes,
Like,
very much so. And I picked it because uh like the Macho Man and Elizabeth are very much the like molds that like Sunny and Chris like used.
okay,
You know what
which
I
makes
mean?
sense.
They were the kind of the like the guinea pig for the formula.
And
It,
what
and
an
what guinea pigs they
what
were.
guinea pigs they were, because this, I could not believe the turns they took with this story, which we'll get into.
Oh yeah. He
Because
was
again,
a intense
I
man.
yes, I know nothing about this. So if you're new here, I am new to wrestling. I know nothing, know nothing Jon Snow, and Xavier is my guide through wrestling. So this is me getting like the backstory and the tea for the very first time. So exciting.
Right.
Um, but speaking of Tammy and Chris, we want to take you back to last week's episode briefly, just for some tea, some clarifications, because very fortunately we have amazing listeners who love to give us the tea.
Right.
And I have to say, love to give us spoiler-free tea, because I think
They really
that
do a good job of
they do
like not ruining it for you.
such a good job. Which also, small props, not small props, XL, humongous props to Xavier, who always vets the episodes for me so that I don't get spoilers. So like, round of applause, thank you so much,
Thank you, thank you.
because I'm dying to watch the Bret Hart episode and Xavier won't let me.
No,
um
don't do it. Don't do it.
so thank you for that. But we had an amazing comment on last week's episode, filling in a little bit of the blanks for us, because we were talking about when Tammy and Chris were in debt from ECW, from accruing hotel debt, from booking hotels, flights, all of that. So we got a comment from Ricky Temple 3847, and I'm just going to read it. Hi, Xavier and Kelsey. Just to fill in the blank between Chris and Sunny leaving ECW and their stint on the Independents before TNA, they were both hired by WCW and worked there through the middle of 2000. Vince Russo, who was working there as the head writer and who had been fond of Chris since his time in the WWE, when they had both worked there in 1995/6, was instrumental in getting them hired to try and help them pay off the debt that ECW had left them with. So that's where they were. I don't remember them talking about them going to WCW in the
Not
episode.
really. Yeah, I feel like it was like they didn't really do anything, like nothing of note, I guess, happened to them while they were there. So it
Yeah.
wasn't really kind of like worth a mention that they just happened to make another stop in another promotion uh before, you know, making their way to like TNA and then all of the tragedy that struck thereafter.
Yeah, it wasn't like, it was like they were just getting a paycheck, girl, to pay off that
Which
debt.
which it coincidentally is what a lot of people were doing at WCW, because WCW was
Oh,
backed by Ted Turner and like TNT, and at the time like TNT and like Ted Turner was like basically like a conglomerate. Like it was huge at the time. It was like the biggest television broadcasting station, so they had just like so much money that they were like giving out all these like guaranteed contracts to wrestlers,
wow.
and that's how they ended up getting a lot of like the WWF superstars, including the Macho Man Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth. Is that they had essentially guaranteed contracts, and what I mean by that is they were guaranteed to work less dates for more money.
Oh, we've talked about this before.
Yeah, so that was like kind of the big draw with WCW.
I get it.
So if they were trying to like accrue money to like pay off the debt, like that's where you wanted to be, because like the people in charge were just spending an exorbitant amount of money to just get the talent that was going to bring eyeballs, that they weren't exactly like looking at how that exactly like shook down until the early 2000s, like the tail end of WCW, when
Mm-hmm.
they ended up merging with AOL. And AOL at the time,
of
AOL and
AT.
Time Warner merged, and AOL like then looked at all of their books and they're like, why are you
Girl,
paying all of these people all of this money and they're not even like on television regularly? Like it's yeah,
not
they
AOL
they
sabotaging the wrestlers.
yeah, and the thing is like the WCW was really like it was Ted Turner's like little baby. So once he was kind of not the main person in charge as far as like WCW goes, once there was a separate entity and a separate board that got a say in it, they were not like wrestling people. Like they did not care.
Mm,
So if the money wasn't
whack.
shaking out, like they weren't gonna make excuses for the money not shaking out. Like they were the bottom line people and they were like, no, this has got to go. So then at like during that like 2001 time period is when Vince at like because the WWF at that point had pulled ahead so far and was making all of this money was able to purchase both of his competitors in the same
Crazy.
year, which is
Which is
insane.
insane.
Right.
Buying your enemies is crazy.
Yeah, well, he essentially created a monopoly like in the year 2001. Like
He was
he
literally a
just
Rockefeller, but for
be,
wrestling.
because yes there were like independent things happening but none of them had enough money flowing into them that they were ever going to be at like anything to compete with the WWF at that time. Like he basically was just like and he bought them for like dirt cheap. Like both of them were like on the verge of like absolutely collapsing. So he bought them for just way less than they were like worth, mainly for their libraries. So if you look and now that when we're talking about like if you look at the WWE network that we watch everything on, that
Mm-hmm.
has WCW's entire catalog because it was purchased in 2001. It has ECW's
No
entire catalog
way.
because it was purchased in 2001. So like
Oh, I did not know that.
yeah, so like I we watch on the like the regular New to Wrestling podcast like Monday Night Raw.
Mm-hmm.
I in my own free time have been watching WCW Nitro like in the same timeline that we're watching just to be like what's going on where.
Which is
Uh
amazing.
but it's fascinating that I'm able to do that because he had just purchased all of his competition,
That is really crazy.
right?
That's actually insane and such a power move. Not that I am condoning Vince McMahon's behavior in any way, in
No, no,
any
no, no.
shape or
We
form,
all know this
but
man
like,
is like the devil. But
yes,
as
but
far
like
as what he
the
did for wrestling, we'll
he is
give
like
him
the
what he
Chris
did.
Jenner of wrestling.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the forethought is really crazy.
Oh, he was as far as like his whole career was up until like the end was predicated on him being kind of like one step ahead as far as like he knew where when cable was coming to the forefront, he was like, oh, we're getting off syndication, we're going on cable. He's like, we're
Mm,
going on uh closed circuit like television or closed circuit like events. Now we're going to pay-per-views. He was the first one to do it. He was like, oh, the all of these are like regional little territories. Oh, I'm going to be a national wrestling company. I'm going to get on national television. So like he was always kind of one step ahead of his competition, and like that's how he managed to like just out finagle all of these people who are like really like in the wrestling business people. But they Vince has always kind of said this like philosophy where it's like, oh, like great, like you're in the wrestling business, like I'm in the entertainment business. Totally different things. He
wow,
yeah. So his
that is
philosophy
wild.
on wrestling was very different
I
than
love
his
that,
competitors.
which is
And
insane.
yeah, I mean, and you can't. They're still around. They're still absolutely. They're making more money now than they ever have. So
Wild. Not to get into like modern tea, but you know how like Nicki Minaj and Meg The Stallion are beefing right now?
yes, 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 yes.
So Nicki
Isn't it
Minaj,
really like just like one sided?
yeah, which we don't have to get into this, but I just think so. Nicki said something in her most recent song, and it was like, calm down before I buy the masters to your songs.
Mm,
Which is, I said, I was like, that is a crazy threat, which is basically what Vince McMahon did. It was
right,
because if she buys the rights to Meg The Stallion songs or her masters, it's like any money Megan ever makes is actually money Nikki's making. And it's
correct,
like, which is an insane threat if you really think about it.
right.
Because you don't even wanna promote your own music at that point. Like, that's wild.
Right.
But it's, like, essentially what happened because now he's making money off of those,
Right.
like, ECW and WC, right? He bought WCW and
And
ECW?
ECW. Yep.
And you're watching that, like, that is really, I mean,
Yeah.
shady
and
and
and like it
diabolical.
was so smart. And like the thing is, like, up the WWE network is fairly new. It's in the last, like, I want to say like 7 8 years.
Yeah.
So like he was just sitting on all of that content.
Oh god,
The
girl.
foresight, the absolute foresight to just be like, and like granted, like he would use them in like documentaries that he would make about wrestlers who were now in the WWF who had history in both, or like history at ECW or WCW, and he would pull matches or whatever from those archives. But to just be sitting on just massive amounts of content like that, and just know, and just having the business foresight to be like, that's going to be worth something someday, more so than it was, in the moment, is just, it's smart. Like, he is Satan, but
He
it's
fumbled his own
smart.
bag by being a sicko, by being a
No, oh,
sick freak.
100%.
He fumbled
Yes.
his own bag.
Yes.
Um,
Speaking of, if we want to do a little update on
oh,
that
yeah.
from
Oh my
last
god,
week.
heck yeah.
um So we are still very much in the preliminary stages of all of this. The only real update is that John Laurinaitis, who is the other executive named in the lawsuit, has now come out and made a statement with his lawyer, essentially that he is also a victim of Vince McMahon's kind of like power games and whatnot. I will say it is. I'll give him this. In the lawsuit itself, it is uh mentioned that Vince was willing to get John Laurinaitis like involved in the situation, but Vince wanted to be privy to all of the conversations between Janelle and John Laurinaitis. Like he was cool with them like chit chatting, but he had to be like in the know. Like that's how much of a
Mm.
control thing he had to have going on. So
Mhm.
I will say, like, do I do I necessarily believe him? I don't know, but it is not unfathomable to believe that he being Vince McMahon just got off on control so much that like it didn't really matter, what players were involved. You know what I
Right.
mean?
There could have definitely been some influence.
Correct.
And he could have, again, like, it could have been a drink the Kool-Aid thing, the worst, most horrible Kool-Aid ever, but it's like,
Right.
if he's overseeing, like, all of your interactions with this person, like, are you making, like, hyping it up as horribly as possible? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
Yeah.
you kinda get, like, caught up in the moment, and again, not that I'm saying, like, that's an excuse or condoning it, but, like, there could have been such an influence there that, like,
Right. I don't know. My thing is also, it's like she probably also has all of those text messages. So
oh,
we will
yeah.
find out, like those weren't necessarily like expressly like, you know, pictured in the lawsuit. A lot
Mhm.
those were all from Vince McMahon, but like it's clearly alluded to in the lawsuit that they were also having ongoing conversations about what was going on. So we'll see how that goes. But he in the statement he just basically goes like, we look forward to our day in court when we can like when we are able to like defend
When the
ourselves.
truth comes to light, yeah.
Right.
If I were Vince McMahon's lawyer, like, I'm feeling like a throwing under the bus is coming, like, throwing the smaller fish into the
There is
fryer. Like,
that
I feel like there's gonna be some really
I
shady.
don't think he's got a leg to stand on.
Oh, no, I
The
don't think so
way
either. I don't think so either.
I don't think he's gonna get away. I truly believe like this man believed that he was just untouchable, and especially untouchable in his little worlds,
Mm,
because he has just been made to be king of his little worlds, and he
mm.
fully believed that he could just do whatever in this space. And I think he kind of lost sight of the fact that there is a real life with real laws and real
Real
consequence
consequences,
outside
period.
of this world that you've created where you have to okay everything goes through you hire everybody, you are the head honcho.
Mhm.
In I think that he has just been in that kind of just cyclical just thought pattern for so long that he fully believed that like he was just not able to catch consequences. And you
Which
know
is
what?
insane.
That's not the age we live in anymore, which has just
Period,
been proved over and
and
over
over
and
again.
over again. The court of public opinion is loud, and it's everywhere. And granted, sometimes does it go a little over the top? Sure. But when they know they got somebody,
Mm,
the court of public opinion does not
is
let up.
no, and it's final. Your judgment is final, like,
Right.
without a doubt. I was gonna say that too. I feel like he's also just, and again, not an excuse, not a dismissal of the behavior, but he's like so old. Like he's older, and I feel like it's like he didn't know screenshots existed. Like, how are you sending foul, foul garbage like that through
Ugh.
text message and
And,
not
and then
expecting
just
screenshots? Like, what?
well, that's the thing. Is like he fully just
Believed he was, yeah,
that he fully believed no one would dare.
so
Like,
crazy.
and oh, and another little tidbit
I love
that
tidbits.
came out is that two tidbits. So John Laurinaitis in is like the executive named in the lawsuit is
Mhm.
married to, I don't know if you know the Bella twins,
I do.
their mother.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Girl.
Stop.
Yes. He is their
Stop.
stepfather and he is embroiled in all of this. So that's another like little twofer like just happening on the
Oh
side. And it was
my God.
also mentioned that Vince McMahon, the NDA that he had this woman sign, he did not run past the board of directors or anything.
I did
Therefore,
hear about
it's
this.
probably not even enforceable. Like,
So, which is
so,
so great. Boy, get your paperwork right. Like, what is wrong with
but
you? How?
how could you run that past the board? How
No, it's
could
so
you?
true.
I
No,
was
it's
like, oh
so
hey,
true.
like, hey guys, like, do you guys mind like approving this? Like, I've clearly just like absolutely been assaulting this woman, but like
Yeah, do
there's
you mind
not
if you approve blatant abuse and silencing that person?
sounds
Like,
great.
yeah, of course. Like, but
So
that is
I'm just
literally
waiting for
insane.
this like to go to trial because it's going to be absolute insanity.
Yeah, it's gonna be a circus and it's gonna be so crazy. And I feel sorry for her in so many ways and not in a pity way. I'm like, not like that. It sucks when something like this happens, period. And then when it
Mm-hmm.
gets made into a circus like this, like, the way it's going to be is going to be
Right.
so much harder. And so, like, I just hope that she gets everything she deserves. Like, this is really
Honestly,
so,
I
so, 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 so
I hope
crazy.
she gets every penny that she is asking for.
Yeah, and very grateful that different people are at the helm of the WWE. Like,
Amen.
please. Wow. That is
I
crazy.
know.
I
I
love when
know.
you give me little tidbits. They're my
Oh,
favorite.
it's
They're a
just
whole meal
wild.
to me. They're a whole meal to me.
We are well fed here.
Well fed. But circling back, thank you, Ricky Temple, so much for your comment because I love the fill in the blanks. And also, before we move on finally to the one and only Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth, I do want to say because we talked about him so much last week and we did not remember his name, which is a sin. So
Oh
we're
yeah,
here
we
calling
really did
ourselves
him
out.
dirty.
The brother of Chris Candido's name is Johnny. Johnny was the star of that episode, and I will stand by it. And I felt heinous that we could not remember his name. What a sin. So we are going on record. Johnny Candido, thank you so much for your service, for your vulnerability, for your story, for everything. God bless. We
God
salute
bless.
you, sir.
And again, thank you for commenting. And if anything you want to interact with us on, if you have just a random question about whatever we're talking about, want to fill in
Yes.
some gaps for us, or if we're wrong, by all means,
Please, please tell
please
us.
correct us. We're all here to learn. So
Yep, we all here to learn, and especially, like, I love that kinda thing, like, when we're talking and then someone's like, "Actually,
right,
this she's married to him." I'd be
right,
like, "What?" Like, to me, that's
right.
just more tea. Like, it doesn't
Mhm.
offend me, it doesn't like
No, no, no.
yeah,
I'm
like,
I'm
let's
perfectly okay with being wrong. Like
yeah, oh, yeah, please, please
I'm
drag
not one of
me.
those people that just like, no, 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 no. I will change my opinion with the advent of new
A
information. That's
absolutely.
that's
Like,
how
I
that works.
we fly too close to the sun as it is. Please
Right.
tell bring us down.
Right, right,
Bring us
right.
down.
I fully agree. So,
Absolutely. Without
well,
further ado,
let's get
let's get into
into
this
it.
episode. I knew absolutely nothing about these people. Obviously, you know the name Macho Man Randy Stop. No
Oh
way.
yeah.
Where did you get
These
those?
were actually a gift from one of my coworkers.
God
I'm not
bless.
sure, but it is like straight up
Those are
like it says
amazing.
Macho Man on the
You're
side.
kidding.
Yeah, it's a
If you're listening on like just the podcast, you're not watching the YouTube video, Xavier has literally the most stunning Macho Man Randy Savage glasses on.
thank
They
you,
look
thank
good on you.
you.
I'm actually like you're actually really you look really good at those.
Oh,
You're pulling them
thanks.
off, like, without a
Oh,
doubt.
thank you. I'm gonna take them off now because it's fully 10 p.m. while we're recording this.
No, we
But
are doing a true after dark episode today. It is
mhm,
late, girl. But I knew nothing about either of them except, you hear the name Randy Savage bandied about.
mhm,
So crazy though, I knew literally nothing about Miss Elizabeth. Nothing. Never heard of her, never seen her.
mhm,
What is cool though is because I don't have Hulu at this time, I'm watching the episodes with other people. So this week I
mm.
watched with my dad, who I did not know until we started doing the podcast was actually a huge wrestling fan when he was a kid. Had
Love that.
no idea.
Everybody was
Um,
back then, I
I
swear.
know, it's so crazy. So he was like, "I had the biggest crush on Miss Elizabeth. She to me was the most like effervescent, angelic
Mhm.
human being who just like you just could not get enough of her." And so it was cool watching it with him and getting like his perspective because he was like, I mean, at the time she was just like the peak. She was like the pinnacle of like
Right.
feminine beauty of like women, just everything.
And
She was
and
like that
and
girl.
like it was I believe in one of my notes I have like it just gives very like Princess Di. Like
It
it is that kind of
does.
like just like ethereal, like she's just so elegant, so beautiful. Doesn't say a lot, but like you know what I mean? But
What
like
she
she's just
says is like
right.
it's
It's
means
and
something.
like and her just juxtaposed with like the absolute insanity that is the Macho Man, like it just makes her look even more like
Mm,
demure and like you know what I mean? Like very
totally.
like I've never seen she's the first to do it like that role and like do it really really well. Uh and you can kind of see why that became
Period.
like the model.
Yeah, and, so Bruce Pritchard, who was, a former wrestling executive,
No, he's still
was
there.
oh, he's still there? Oh, I have former, I don't know why, sorry, see?
No, no,
Tell
no,
me when
he's
I'm
still
wrong.
kicking. Fun facts.
So he's a wrestling executive. He literally said, I have a quote, and it was like one of the first things said is like they were the first and they were the best to ever
Mhm.
do it, point blank, period. And
Right.
I mean, the storyline is so crazy. And again, because they were the first, it makes it fresh and like
Mhm.
just so insane. But even me who's seen, obviously if like there's marriages on like they have weddings on like
Right.
but they were the first. Like
Mhm.
it was just wow. But they truly were like Beauty and the Beast. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
girl.
Absolutely. And, like, they were working in the time of, like, very much the, like, the live your gimmick era. Like
Yes. Yeah. This I thought was super interesting because we've talked about this on the other podcast where like I find it so insane. And we even talked about it a little last week, like blurring the lines of your characters. And
mhm,
like I think Bruce said it. It was like you had to live your gimmick and he lived it 24/7 to the max. And his brother, who also loved having another brother in
mhm.
the show, so his name was Lanny Profo. He also was like he dialed it up to 100. Like he was it said he dialed it past 100 with the door broken off the hinges,
Yeah.
like his character. Which I thought was like an amazing description of, again, like it paints a picture because again, I have no
Mhm.
idea who this is or I've never
Yeah.
seen him wrestle. It really painted a picture for me.
And I remember them making a point to be like, he loved being like the bad guy. Like he
Mhm.
loved the creativity of being the bad guy. He liked like not having to like just be in that box of like being the goody and having to like, answer to the fans in that regard. You know what I mean? Like he
I
got to
love
just
that.
be unhinged, which
And
is exactly who he is.
absolutely, and I feel like, I love that about certain people, like, when we talked about Sunny and she was like she loved being the villain, like,
Hmm.
she really got into it, because like, I if which obviously everyone does when you watch wrestling, if, like, you try and picture yourself, like, who would I be? Would I be a babyface? Would I be a heel?
Right.
Whatever. I think I would, like, low key hate being the villain. I'd be, like, so upset if people were like I'm doing, like, insane moves and people are, like, booing me, like, I think
Right,
I'd be
right,
so
right.
devastated. So, like, the fact that some people, like,
I feel like I would
embrace
love
it.
it. I feel like
You absolutely
I would
would.
love being the villain.
Absolutely. Xavier would love being the heel, please. I love
Uh,
it. And you would do
uh,
such a good job at it.
Thank you.
I have no
I would
doubts.
absolutely love just getting like just cheap heat. Like just doing anything I could to just make people annoyed at me.
Girl, any heat at all.
Right.
Cheap, rich, all of it.
Love it.
Love it. Yeah, I could see that. And it's amazing that people like have that in them where they're like, yeah,
Hmm.
boo. Like as long as you love me, I
As
don't
long as you
care.
react, I don't care.
Period. And I also loved they had Linda Bollea, who is the former wife of Hulk Hogan, married for 25 years,
They had
no longer
a Do you
together.
remember the reality show that they had once upon
I
a time?
do.
Hogan
I
Knows
do.
Best.
Yes, which is
That was like the last
insane.
time I've seen her. Like, so I like watching this episode, I was like, oh my God, Linda, hi.
Hi,
Like,
girl. She's first of all, she's fabulous. Second, I love her because she is a real girl's girl.
right. I
Like because
agree.
I literally wrote at one point, like, and it comes in later, but when she's talking about she's been with Hulk for a while now, and she's been one of the only women on the road with them and whatever, and when
Hmm.
Elizabeth comes to the WWE, instead of being like, because she could have been like a nasty girl, like, "I've been here," like, she could have been,
Right.
dismissive, like, "I'm just here with my man," like, whatever, and she's like someone asked me to do her hair one day, and I was like, "Finally, I wanna get in that dressing room, I'm gonna talk to this
Right.
girl, I'm gonna do her hair, I'm gonna do her makeup, we're gonna go out, we're gonna go to the beach." Like,
Hmm.
she, like, really took her in and was like, "We're gonna be best friends now," and that's that. And I was
Right.
like, "I just love when women
I appreciate that.
I just love when women,
And we'll get into like later when she like really like doesn't divulge from the friend code. Like
period."
she
She's
is
a baddie.
ride or die. You know what I mean? And I
Mhm.
appreciate that. I really respect it.
Absolutely. Also, we saw the real Razor Ramon, who I've never actually seen.
Scott
So this
Hall.
was iconic, yes, because
Mhm.
I only know fake Razor
No,
that we're watching
which
right
is
now.
hilarious to me. I love that you've never actually seen
Seen Razor.
Ramon.
Scott Oliver Hall is Razor Ramon. He is my Razor Ramon. Even just him now in this iteration with the toothpick, the hair, the salt and
It
pepper, his attitude, it
he
just
is Razor Ramon.
he
He
is
is
Razor Ramon.
everything that knockoff wanted to be, but came out looking just a little more
Honey,
squishy and a little more sad.
period. And I was like, this man, he still
Mm,
has something. He
right,
is salt and pepper. He is Razor Ramon, girl. But
right,
he said, listen, like, I would have banged Randy. He was cool as hell.
right.
Which I
I respect it. I absolutely respect it. Um, so they meet, interestingly enough, at a gym, just kind of
Oh,
randomly.
that's right, yes.
And this they meet like apparently 6 months before the Macho Man makes his WWF debut. So he's already like in the wrestling like world, and she was apparently working as like an announcer and an editor, which is impressive because like this is like the 80s. Like we weren't like editing like I edit. Like
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
no. So like that's pretty impressive. Like she was doing a lot.
Yeah, and and they got married before they even went to the WWE, right? Like,
Oh,
I
they
think
they were married like the whole time
the whole
basically.
yeah, which they don't mention until later on, but they kept very on the DL. Like they did not tell anybody that they
Mhm.
were actually husband and wife, which is
Right.
insane.
I
Because
do I do have just a completely unrelated note that
absolutely.
says Vince Speedo photo with like 8
Girl.
exclamation points. It
Okay,
was
so first of all, we have to remember that Dark Side of the Ring came out year like a decent amount of time ago, actually, like
uh,
2, 3 years
well,
ago.
especially this one because this is the first
The first,
they're about to be on season 5 and this is the first episode of season 1.
yeah. So
So,
this is like literally the beginning. But Linda is going through all of her photos, like looking for pictures of Elizabeth, and like is like, oh, look at that, it's Vince McMahon in a speedo, and I was like, oh my god, no, 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 no,
it was
no, did not,
horrible.
I did not need to see that.
I had to make note of it because it took me like so off guard. I was like, wait.
Mm-mm. But yeah, so they go to the WWE and they go under this guise of like they wanted you to hate Randy and
Right,
love Miss Elizabeth. Like you wanted to like think Randy was the worst person on the earth, but like you just couldn't help but like kind of root for him because you loved Elizabeth so much. Like
right,
you were mostly rooting for her. It's kind of like what we say only to a way lesser degree with like Mark Miro and Sable, where it's like
right,
Sable is the best part of Mark Miro. But the difference is this is Macho Man Randy Savage, who's also an incredible wrestler. Like
right.
he gives Stone Cold Steve
Absolute
Austin
legend.
vibes, where it's like he's such a villain, but you can't help but love him.
Right.
But
So basically, they would do like these like interactions with the Macho Man and Elizabeth on television, where he was basically just like acting as like an abusive boyfriend or like a like just he was just
possessive.
very possessive, which is once again art imitating life. In that he was a very low like it was he was described as just being like very loyal to the ones that he loves, and like
Yes.
very protective of the ones that he loves. So it was very much like not a stretch for him to do, but
Right.
like on television they would make it a point to like have him like aggressively move her somewhere or like give like if she's interacting with somebody like move her like out of the way or like just just be very in control of her, which
Yeah.
made the fans hate him because it was just like what are you doing, and it just
Yeah.
made her look all the more like like a damsel in distress.
Yeah, there was like one part where they're doing a promo and he's like yelling and she's like sitting there like shining his like championship belt or something
Mm,
and he's like hurry up, like he like yells at her and she's like okay Randy, and she is
right.
like shining it harder, and like that was like the whole thing is just like
Hmm.
everything she did, like he was just like on her case about it, but also he like was obviously enamored and obsessed with her. It was like it really was like it gave abusive boyfriend
Right.
vibes.
Like yeah, he was just like doing everything in his power to just make sure that he looked like a dirtbag and she looked like untouchable, basically.
Yeah.
So where do we from here? We get the kind of like art imitating life situation with Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man.
This was okay, this was so crazy. I cuz like I just the way they did this, cuz keep in mind like Linda and Hulk are married.
Correct.
Randy and Elizabeth are married.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're kind of like I guess sort of enemies that end up being like on the same team. They end up like really teaming them up, which I think is genius. So like Hulk and Randy
Yes.
Savage, like
The Mega
the
Powers.
mega powers. So like Randy Savage is this like crazy unhinged like
The
heel
Madness.
bad guy, the madness, and then the Hulk is like the all
Hulkamania.
American.
Yeah.
Yes, like the whatever. And they team them up, which I think is iconic to be honest. Like I was like
Hmm.
watching
It
some of
was
their
a big deal
promos.
back then too. Like it was not that I was around, but it was. I remember my father telling me like it was like all anybody talked about. Like was those two
Legend
being on a
shit.
team. Yeah.
Legendary. Like even just seeing the two of them together, like it just makes you feel something. Like it
Right.
it just it makes you feel like feral. It's
Hmm.
just exciting. But then they start basically as we always say sowing the seeds of discord
Right.
by
Right.
like
Right.
so Randy Savage had this move, if he won a match he would take Elizabeth and prop her up on his shoulder and they would like walk around the ring
Yeah.
like
They do it
very
like a lap.
very quarterback on the football team and head
Hmm.
cheerleader vibes, like and do a little lap.
No, I agree.
And when Hulk and Randy started being wrestling as a team, Elizabeth was kind of made to be their manager as, like, a unit,
Right.
and there was an incident where they played that Elizabeth was up on Randy's shoulder, but she started to slip, and they literally had Hulk grab her ass and, like, push her
Prop her
back
back
up
up.
and, like, hold it there for a long time, and Jake the Snake also, which can we talk about Jake the Snake for a second?
Yes, please. Please, please,
I
please.
only know Jake the Snake in his, like, probably the final quarter of his wrestling career, I would guess. Like, or the final half,
Yeah, yeah, the later
towards the
half,
back
yeah.
half of his wrestling career. So I really didn't know much about him, and also, like, B in the D, wrestling in the '80s is if you think wrestling in the '90s is unhinged, girl, wrestling in the '80s, there was, like, no rules. So Jake the Snake he was a heel, he was, like, a number 1 villain. I didn't realize, and again, this is ignorant of me, but I'm new here, I'm just being vulnerable and honest. I did not realize how huge he was.
Jake?
Like, Jake the Snake was huge.
Oh yeah, he was yeah.
He
All of
was
these
a
guys were like larger
presence.
than life because
Yes.
when we talked about like these were the first wrestlers to like the first like crop of wrestlers to like be on national television. Like this was
Yeah.
like the first time that they weren't just like in a little independent like traveling from like region to region and like oh like you knew this like wrestler if they like went to enough of the popular like regions. This was
Mhm.
like the first crop of like oh like I can turn on my TV and see these people every week.
Word.
So this was like that crop. So like they were huge.
Yeah, and they wanted to be remembered. They were
Right.
memorable. So, like, which we'll get into more Jake the Snake, but, like, so Jake the Snake, is the one that said, like, they had, like, Randy Savage promos where because they start like they make Randy Savage like start to suspect like there's a love affair going on between Elizabeth and Hulk, and
Right.
like Hulk and Elizabeth are like kind of playing it up where they're like getting flirty and they're like
Mhm.
talking, whatever.
Yeah,
And Jake
I
the
I
Snake
have a
is like,
quote. He goes, not from Jake Snake, it's from one of the Macho Man's like promos. He goes like it's like you got lust in your eyes.
mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh,
Which, by the way, anytime anyone in this episode did a quote from Randy
you
Savage,
had to
they
do the
did the
accent.
voice,
You
which was
have
to
to.
everybody, everybody,
Everybody.
Linda, Jake the Snake, Jimmy
Because
Hart,
that's how he
Bruce,
talked.
because
Like,
that's how he was. Like, and they were like, if you were talking, even his brother, if you were talking
oh
about Randy
yeah.
Savage, you were using the voice, which I
Yeah,
loved.
yeah, yeah.
But Jake the thing was like, he literally would like pull up the video of Hulk like holding her ass and like count the seconds, and that would be his promo, and he'd be like, "That's 5 seconds too long," or like whatever. Like he
Mm-hmm.
was like, it was so OD.
Mm-hmm.
And then what was so insane, which I guess so it takes time to build up to this point, but oh sorry, I got lost
No, it's okay.
in my notes.
Elizabeth Bly
Oh,
I go ahead.
so I guess it because I wrote Randy was OD protective of Elizabeth, real life issues started mirroring in-ring issues. Okay. So Jake the Snake also says, which I thought was crazy. I would never, let me just say this on the record. I give the women of this time a lot of credit. Jake the Snake says it's hard to have your wife around those guys. I had my wife along with us for a while, and then I was like, absolutely not. Like, and then Lanny talks about, or the brother, yes, Lanny talks about they would do like the most heinous pranks, and he goes, they literally would use people's suitcases as toilets.
Right.
No boundaries, just very
Nah.
invasive. You had no privacy. And he was like, Jake the Snake is like, and this is like a husband and wife. Like, we're all like, people are partying, they're going crazy, they're pranking each other, they're like doing all these horrible things to each
Right.
other. And they just want to like go back to their room and relax as like husband and wife.
Right.
But like, it's hard to be around those. And he was saying like, the issues on the road that happened between like the guy started like infiltrating their marriage, especially because Randy was so protective of
Yeah,
her
he wanted to
that
keep her
then
away from the boys,
he
like
started, yeah, he started like basically locking her up, like was like,
right.
you cannot leave this room, like you have to stay here. And so it got very like
Very controlling. It's just very
very, very,
controlling.
very controlling. Um, and I guess it starts really, really taking a toll on her. Um, but so
Yeah.
eventually she asked for a break, I think.
Oh, so yeah, so we have yeah, so I have like life imitating art, and then it's I believe Jake the Snake was like, oh, like when that starts happening, that's when you really start getting like messed up. And basically, Elizabeth kind of started getting fed up with just kind of always having to be like somewhere or always being like controlled or always having to be like by Randy. Like she ended up asking for a break and she did get it. So this was the first time like that since the debut of the two of them that they have like Macho Man hasn't been seen immediately with Elizabeth. So
Mm.
this is when the Macho Man becomes like the Macho King. He wins the King of the Ring of whatever year that they're on and becomes like the Macho King, and he gets paired with Sherry, who is like she's been paired with everybody.
Which
Sherry
who? I wrote Sensational Sherry a bunch of question marks because who is this? I haven't.
Sherry, she's a manager, like obviously. She managed the Macho Man Randy Savage. She managed Shawn Michaels, notably, um,
Mm.
before before he was coming out with like Jose Lothario. It was Sherry. Um,
Because
yeah,
I
and
couldn't tell if she was like a wrestler or
she
she was
was,
in
yeah, she was a yeah, she was a like a female wrestler, and then she was also like a manager.
word.
She did both. And that's why they said they made mention that like people loved working with Sherry because she was a wrestler also. So like she could get in there and like it was
She
fine.
knew what she was doing. Yeah, because oh yeah, because there was clips of her like actually wrestling, and they said like she literally could wrestle with the best of them. Like she really could like
Hmm.
take a
Yeah.
licking.
And
But
they said like as a like a note, like during that entire time, like there was always this like undercurrent of like, where's Elizabeth?
yes, like so he's with Sherry and everyone's like, okay, like cool, but like where is Elizabeth?
Hmm.
Like we want Elizabeth. And she's like meanwhile like really taking a break. Um but also so there was and I can't remember if this was before she left or after she came back, but I'm assuming it's before she left now that I'm thinking about it, when they have the falling out, the whole thing with Hulk Hogan holding her or carrying her out
Oh
from
yeah.
the hospital was before she left, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This
Okay,
was like during that whole like the Mega Powers like storyline. It
right.
was all of that where like she gets like knocked down during like one of the matches and Hulk just like carries her like dead body like to the back or like brings her to like the hospital and he's like
And he's like
crying by her
clutching her.
bedside and like meanwhile like her actual husband is like in the ring alone because his tag team partner is like attending to his wife. Like it's
It's really
chaotic.
crazy, crazy. And again, that's why I'm saying, like, remember that like Hulk Hogan's also married, like to somebody else.
Right.
And I get it, like he's a character or whatever. But it's like it's so crazy that at this time, like people are literally rooting or like like I don't remember who was talking about it, but it's like people literally wanted to see her leave Randy for Hulk Hogan
Right.
because like he was the one who was like supporting her. He was like tender with her. He was like
Right.
soft and like meanwhile Randy's literally a savage, is crazy. And so they
Hmm.
have this like whole thing. So then it's like a really big falling out. But then of course, Elizabeth takes a break. Sherry comes in, but it's always, always, always the underlying where's Elizabeth? Where's
Hmm.
Elizabeth? Where's Elizabeth? And when she does come back, for some reason I just have written Elizabeth beats Sherry's ass, LMAO.
Yeah, I literally go Elizabeth fights for her man.
Which kind of iconic, which I think, oh, okay, I remember now. She's in the audience, right? For the
Mm,
match. And it's like
right.
so dramatic, like something like he's getting like his ass handed to him or something, and she
Hmm.
like comes to his rescue.
Right. And
And
he does this like
everyone
whole impassioned speech. Where he's just like, "Oh, I love you, Elizabeth." Like, and then he's like,
it
and then
was
he asks her
always
to
you
marry him.
on the spot. On
Um,
this the drama, the drama of
mhm.
this is crazy. I was literally watching this on the edge of my seat. Her in the audience just like looking like, "Oh my, what do I do?" Because everyone's been asking for her, and she's like, it's this dilemma where you're like, literally, I can feel like the tension in the audience where it's like,
Mhm.
we hate the way Randy Savage treats her, but we love her so much, and we want. Are they like just meant to be together? As
Right.
toxic as it is, are they just like meant to be together? So when she like runs in and she beats up Sherry, everyone is losing it.
Losing
And when
it.
he
Yeah.
proposes to her, losing it. There literally, I think Jake the Snake said there were grown men in the audience crying, or maybe
Crying.
it was Bruce. But either way, someone's like, there were literally grown men, women, everyone crying, tears.
Mhm.
Like it was like the reunion of the century. It was so well done. So well done.
Yeah, and then they
This
do like a wedding. They 7 years after the fact that they were already married, they got married. Their characters got married on screen, uh,
in the ring,
which is
girl,
again another thing that
iconic.
another like thing that they are like the mold for because it
Yes.
happens. It's a reoccurring thing that happens in the
Because I've
WWE.
seen clips of it happening in other
Hmm.
times, like, and then people interrupt or like
Right? Yeah,
people like
yeah.
it's like a whole
There's
thing.
never a successful wedding at the in the WWE.
Which is so funny. But like,
Hmm.
yeah, dude, and they were like, I think Linda said it. They were like, then they played it up. Her promos were like about like picking gowns and like
Hmm.
colors and flowers. Like they made it like a whole thing and then got married in the wrestling ring. I just like watching this, I wish I could have watched this storyline in real time because the way this is like a soap opera, I would have
It's
died.
this is literally why I call wrestling the male soap opera. Like this is
It
like I and like there is not one person that I have like made that like comparison where they haven't been like, oh yeah. Like,
It is because it's like, who hates this person now? Which family is feuding
and
with
it's
this
so
one?
outlandish, you know what I mean? Where it's like this person got shot in a cave and then comes back as like a different actor, but it's the same character, but like he had all
Period.
this like crazy like facial reconstruction surgery and we're all just
Mm-hmm.
supposed to like accept it.
Pretend.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-mm. It's
Yeah.
so crazy. The drama is just so good, so good. And then the next thing I have in my notes is the snake.
Is the snake.
This is this
Crazy.
is insane, and I don't know how ever they got away with this, but I guess this was, like, lending itself to the storyline that Randy was, like, literally, like, really untrustworthy,
Paranoid.
like, not
Yeah.
untrustworthy, paranoid. He, like, really did not trust anybody, he was possessive, he was, like, really starting to, like,
And
go
he
a little.
was. And he was. That's again, life
Absolutely.
imitating art. Like he was a paranoid man.
Yes. So, like, so Jake the snake, who obviously is the possessor of snakes, they were gonna do this whole thing where the snake bites Randy, but, like, somehow which I am not an animal science whatever, I have no idea how they did this. He said, like, the snake was no longer venomous, but it was a venomous snake, that they,
Right.
like,
Like
somehow, like,
they
got the venom out. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. I thought they
oh,
just
I think that's yeah. Yeah, yeah,
had
I
no
think that's
idea. So
yeah.
learn something new every day. Jake's like, yeah, but basically the short version of this is that Randy was so paranoid that Jake was actually going to let a true
Venomous
active
snake
venomous snake bite him in the ring, that he made Jake make the snake bite Jake first
first.
before they had
Right.
to prove. And
And
literally he said Randy just sat there and was like, don't drink anything, don't touch anything, don't you move. He literally said he watched Jake the snake said Randy watched him for a half hour,
yeah, and
like
he was just
watched him
like,
get
"How do you
bit.
feel?" And he's like, "Pretty pissed off now." Like,
And he said, so I gave him his receipt and I made that snake pissed
oh yeah,
off
he said he
before I
paintbrushed the back of the snake before he got like took it out of the bag, and the snake was like ready, like
livid,
boiled. And
livid.
what and this snake got oh, it got a good that day.
Girl,
That like he was not letting go for anything. That snake
nope.
was attached.
Yeah, and Jake was like, people were telling me, like, get the snake off, like, the bit is done, like, it's over. And Jake was like, no, I know, I literally can't get it off. Like,
Right.
I cannot. And even a non-poisonous snake, the fangs are like this long.
Hmm.
They're like an inch long.
Right.
The, wh- and
Wrestlers are
it
crazy.
This is so great. He was like, "Yeah, let's just have Randy get bitten by a snake and like to just like sensationalize the feud between Jake the
Right.
Snake and Randy Savage." Just so crazy. And then after that, Jake the Snake slaps Elizabeth on camera.
Yeah.
I thought this was crazy. I thought, though I will say Elizabeth's family, I wish that they had interviewed her family more,
Hmm.
but they this was like so funny. Jake the Snake said that when he slapped Elizabeth on camera, her family was so mad they refused to let Randy in their house until he got his comeuppance on Jake the
Gotcha.
Snake,
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
they said that he Randy was in charge of protecting her when he took her to the WWE. He made them a promise that he would protect her, and they said in watching their daughter get slapped on television was not okay, and he was not allowed back in the house until
Right.
Randy got his revenge on Jake,
Hmm.
which I love the energy. I
Right.
love the energy. Don't come in
Mhm.
my house. Don't come in
No,
my
no,
house.
no.
I don't care if it's a part of the thing. Don't you let some other man slap my daughter and then try
Right.
and come into my house. Absolutely not.
Love that. Absolutely love
Love the
that.
energy. Love the energy. But
Uh,
it is that's kinda dark, like Jake just slapping
mhm.
Elizabeth. Mhm.
Yeah. So so the next thing I have is kind of we flash forward a little bit after they've kind of their on-screen kind of reconciliation. It has kind of gotten to the point where Elizabeth has had like enough of Randy kind of always being so controlling and
Yeah,
always just needing to know where she is, not allowing her to do certain things, whatever. So she goes to visit Linda in
in
Florida
Miami.
at the time, and they like basically she reasons it being like, oh, like I just want to go like help her with like with the kids and like hang out and like just relax, go enjoy like the weather.
Mhm,
And Macho Man, having already had a prior relationship with Linda and Hulk, was like, all right, and like as long as you're gonna be like with Linda, then like sure.
mhm.
Um, and yeah, if you want to take away what happens from here, it's
Well, what's crazy too is that, like you saying, like, after their reconciliation, it's actually, like, really bad, and I forget who said it, but it's, like, someone at like, the producer or somebody was like, "What was the status of their relationship when they got married on screen?" And someone said, "It was the worst it ever was." Like, they were
right,
this close to
an actual
separating
divorce, yeah.
while they were
Getting
literally getting
married on
married.
screen.
So it obviously only, like we said, escalates from there, gets worse and worse. She flies down to Miami, and I this was confusing. She was supposed to stay with Linda, but then she tells Linda she met a man
Mhm.
who she's gonna stay at his place or,
Right.
like, in a room at his
Whatever.
place or in a condo next to somewhere. She's gonna stay with him, and she's not answering the phone. She's kind of, like, disappeared. Like,
Right.
Linda knows she's in the vicinity, but not really she doesn't really know who this man is or whatever, and so Randy starts calling their house and is like, "Where's my wife? Like, what is this?" Like,
Right.
and Linda, again, girl code, is
Mhm.
like, "She's just not here," and she was like, "I didn't say where she was. I didn't say what she was doing,
Mhm.
even though I
Sh
knew."
she was not here. She's not
She said,
here.
"She's just not here." I don't and so she goes, "Of course." Randy shows up because he's crazy. He gets on the
Mhm.
next flight. She goes, "He was literally there within 4 hours of getting
Right.
off the phone." And, like, he shows up and he flips out because
Right.
she's not there,
Right.
doesn't know where she is. Eventually, literally, I guess he goes she says something like he goes door to door, basically, and finds her.
Right.
And then there, Hulk goes to find her with Randy, finds her. Hulk comes back without Randy and is like, "They're working it out. I don't know. I'm not getting involved anymore."
Right.
And so Linda's like, "I have no idea what happened." But after that, I think it was she said like a few weeks later, Linda called her and was like, "I left Randy."
Yeah. And she was just like, yeah.
She was like at a
So,
gas station. She's like, sounded like she was at a gas station. She was on a payphone, like whatever
right.
number. She was like, "I left Randy," and that was that.
Right. She had finally like she had reached
Her
her
limit.
limit. Yeah.
And then I think it goes to Bruce talking about how it was like after whatever episode, and he was just like waiting in the car to go back to the hotel to get like shuttled back to the hotel or something. And they're waiting for Vince. And Vince comes down out to the car and he gets in and he goes, "Just so you guys know, Randy Savage is now the proud property of WCW."
Yeah.
And Bruce was like,
And
"What?"
that was a lot of Vince's doing in that uh this was when we kind of shift from like what's called like the golden era into like Bret Hart's era.
Okay.
That whole thing where they were trying to go towards like younger stars. So that's like your Bret Hart, your Razor Ramon, your Diesel, Yokozuna, like Owen Hart, like all of these people were like now coming in, but Vince was kind of taking the stars from the older kind of generation, um, and kind of using them in a less prominent capacity. So the Macho Man was really being relegated to like commentary a lot.
Mm,
And he believed like he could still go. Like he didn't really feel like that was right for him. Like he could contribute in the ring still.
absolutely.
And so once Hulk made the jump to the WCW, it was like it because of who Hulk was at that time, like he was the first wrestler to like transcend wrestling. People like if
Mm,
you knew nothing about wrestling and you were asked about wrestling, you go, "Oh yeah, that thing Hulk Hogan does."
yes,
Like
it's
and
so
like
true.
and so like he was the first one that like transcended like out of like wrestling into like movies, into television shows. He was friends with like Mr. T. Like
Mhm,
it was
mhm.
like he was because he was such a prominent person and he was like the first one to really like make that jump. It like just opened the floodgates for everybody.
Mm,
Because they were like, oh, like if I'm not being utilized here, there's actually another place I can go work and actually make money. Because now there was another national company. So like once that happened, uh Randy made his way over because he was like, I'm not an announcer. Like, yeah,
yeah,
he's good on the mic, but like I can do more. Uh
totally.
that was kind of Vince's doing, really.
Well, yeah, there was an earlier quote from Linda in this where she said Vince was trying to take the WWE to a whole different place and none of us knew what was going on. Like decisions were just made out of the blue and we would just like that was that. Like we had no idea what direction it was going. He kept everything like really under wraps. Like
Right, very
all I
close to
knew
the
is that there
chest.
were
Yeah.
there were plans in place that none of us knew anything about and I thought that was really interesting and telling about literally everything, the whole genesis of WWE.
Right.
So, but
And the most like interesting thing is Randy goes to like WCW and still
girl,
is he's in the middle of divorcing this woman and still goes out of his way to vouch for her to get her a job there. And not just like a
crazy.
job, like a very well paid job there.
Yep.
Which is like you are down bad if you are in
Down.
the middle of a divorce and you're like, let me actively take the woman that's divorcing me and continue to work with her.
I literally
Like
just got chills. It really is crazy. And we'll get to the when we get to the end, like I definitely want to talk about more about that. But like I wish I knew like there was more insight on like his thought process with that because no one really says anything other than like he just really cared for her, like he just really loved her and
wanted to
like
make sure she was taken care of.
wanted to make sure she was taken care of, which is so crazy. And again, it's like that mirror of like Tammy and Chris where it's like, sir. And not that
Right.
Elizabeth is not the villain in this scenario in any
Capacity.
way,
Right.
but it's just like what a crazy thing to be like so enamored with somebody. And like when she does come to the WCW because
Yeah.
she takes the offer, she ends up being the villain and like Randy Savage is the
Is
baby face.
right because he had at this point the thing that happens with villains is like if you are a like good enough villain for long enough, they just like you. You just become the one that they like because they respect you so much for all of the work that you have done. So at that point in his career, had such a legendary career that when he went to WCW, he just kind of like went in as like a beloved legend. And
Crazy.
she came in as kind of like got to like play up that like villain side because
Mhm.
they were taking like very much like the backstage turmoil or like their real life turmoil and putting it very publicly. And that's
Mhm.
what made her the villain in that scenario.
Which is
Because
wild.
she was having an ongoing affair
Girl.
with another wrestler in WCW, Lex Luger.
Girl.
While Lex Luger was married to somebody else with children
With children. Lex Luger, kept her in a condo in the same neighborhood as him
in the
and
same
his family.
complex,
In the
in the same
same
complex,
complex as him and his family. He paid for it. Same complex.
so that he could
So
just,
take a little walk around the block. That is crazy.
that is
Crazy.
crazy.
So like this and how this got so twisted and like turned around, I still don't even know. Like
Drugs.
Literally, girl drugs. They they come into the WWE as like the Beauty and the Beast, and somehow now like she's having an affair with a married man who has kids, but she's still her ex-husband's manager after he got her the job. It's like
It's crazy.
it
Like,
is so
how
twisted,
do you go to work every day and just like not break down? I don't know.
girl.
I couldn't keep all of that like
But
straight. Are you kidding me? Especially with her husband being who, or her ex-husband being who he is. Like,
and I guess like he just like didn't say anything about it because I guess Linda or she confided in Linda, like, I'm seeing somebody and it's Lex. And Linda was like, that's a bad idea. Like, straight
right,
up, she was like, I told her, like, that's bad. That
right.
is no, 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 no.
She's like,
But
that's bad. And then she told her where she was living, and she's like, that's worse.
worse. Whereas I love Linda so much. But it is interesting bringing up the pills. When they show her at WCW, I was like, she's on drugs. You can tell. You can always tell. I was like, I just feel like she's
Mm-hmm.
on drugs, which is shocking because she just had that air of like just that would never touch her, but like obviously it did.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then like shortly after that, they're like, and it turns out she was she and Lex were doing tons of drugs.
Right.
Her condo was basically like an opium den, and they were just doing drugs, drinking, like who even knows, like
And there was one point where it apparently got like physical between the
physical.
two, and she had like two black eyes like from Lex Luger, and
Mm-mm.
then it cuts to this just like absolutely like alarming 911 call,
Chilling.
which is uh, Lex Luger essentially finding Elizabeth like mid overdose and like her
They
passing.
they were sitting on the couch together.
Right.
They were sitting on the couch together, they were doing drugs, and he said she just stopped breathing. She just like gurgled, stopped breathing. This 911 call, if you guys have not seen this episode, like you have to see that. And because it's just chilling. It's
Right.
they just play the 911 call and it's like
Mm-hmm.
him, and if you think about it, if you just visualize Lex Luger, who's huge, huge. This
Is
humongous man, and he is in pieces because he's like, I don't think she's
pieces.
breathing. He was so scared to even check her. The 911 woman
He's
was
like, you
like,
need to send somebody. Like, he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, you need to send somebody who like knows what's going on. Like, like, you know what I mean? Like, she's not breathing. Like, I don't see her chest. Like, and like the guy, like the operator on the other line's like, I need you to like get down on the floor and like look at her chest. Is it rising? Like,
rising and
is it falling? Like, and they were just like, he was just like probably having like a panic attack or whatever. Because I like, what do you do? Like,
what do you do?
right? Like, that's got to be so scary.
Yeah, and it's so harrowing because he literally is like he's so scared and to check her even that she's breathing because he doesn't know. I will say this, I want to give him a lot of credit because like there are people who are in that scenario where they're surrounded by drugs, surrounded by alcohol. They're like definitely engaging in illegal activities and are afraid to call anybody when
Right.
their friends or their loved ones like
I mean,
are
I
in a
think it helps
crisis.
that you have the resources that they
Oh,
probably had at that time.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But
But
still,
still,
so the paramedics come and I don't remember if she's even taken in the hospital. I do not know, but either way, she
I think she's
dies,
pronounced dead there. Like, and whatchamacallit, Luger gets arrested.
arrested for
Just
all. He said
all
he
of the
think he had like
drugs.
27 charges like against
Right.
him. Um, that's that too. That whole thing was interesting too because I don't remember who has the podcast. Maybe someone was like, oh, maybe it was Jimmy. Somebody has a wrestling podcast. Jimmy Hart maybe has a podcast and had was like really hesitant to bring.
Oh, Eric Bischoff.
Thank you, um,
Eric Bischoff.
Eric Bischoff, and
Who
he
was in this scenario was their boss at
yes,
WCW.
right, and he said he was like really hesitant to bring Lex on the podcast to talk about this. He goes because it like it
He was
really
upset with like he was just like he was just pissed at Lex
yeah
for a long time, and like he was like, I didn't want to like have him on because I was just like I was done with him. But then he like goes like to like kind of turn around. He's like, I gained a lot of respect for him that day in the way that he like took responsibility for
Right.
everything and like was very honest and very like vulnerable about it. Which is you can only get to that place like having really like gone through it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
To like because you either get to that place or it destroys you, like realistically, because
So
something
true.
like that like does not leave your life untouched. So it
Absolutely.
was either like he was gonna like find a path where he was like, I really messed up. I have to take responsibility for this. Like these are the mistakes I made, and like there's nothing I can do about it now, but this is where I'm at. Or he could have gone on the path where just like he
You
spiraled
you
and like joined her.
end up dead. Yep.
Right.
It's really so true. And I should have looked this up. I wonder if he's still with his wife.
Lex,
Yeah,
he's passed
he's passed.
since.
Okay.
So
Interesting. Yeah,
yeah.
so crazy. But yeah, so unfortunately she's dead at
Actually, I
42.
don't. Hold on. I could have just lied to you.
Got me grieving over somebody who might not even be dead.
Hold on. I don't know. I could. I thought he passed. Oh no, he's still kicking.
Let me find it's
He's 65.
not even that old.
No, but he did a lot of drugs. I don't know.
Yeah, well, obviously.
Hold on, I want to see if he's
Still married. I'm curious if the wife stood by
They were
her man.
together from 1999 to 2003.
Okay, so no. I mean, I don't know how you say it. I find out you're having an affair with a woman and you killed her.
Oh no, he got divorced in 2003. My imagination is running wild in that she probably found out about all of this when he got arrested for
That's what I'm saying.
like
How crazy.
yeah.
Because finding, oh God,
Can
girl,
you imagine
where was her
not
confessional?
only like finding out your husband is cheating, finding out your husband is cheating around the
Over there.
corner with somebody he works with, like, and they're doing buttloads of drugs. And then he like was present for her overdose and then gets arrested on like 27 counts of whatever. And like that's how you find out that your husband is cheating on you?
And meanwhile, you're at home raising the kids because he's always on the road.
The
Stop.
road around the corner.
Where was her confessional? Girl,
Yo, she
I
probably
need to.
wanted nothing to do with that.
No, she was like canceled, cancel, cancel, throw away. Do not call me ever again. Oh
Ugh.
God, I would love to know. That's crazy.
Amen. So
Oh, what a
that
sin.
is how the like incomparable Miss Elizabeth like made her
What a sin.
end.
What a
And
sin.
we should just wrap up Randy. Kind of what happens the rest of
I,
his career is like
but
he kind of just like he finishes out his wrestling career like for the most part. He apparently gets very involved in like the Special Olympics.
mm-hmm.
He stars in Spider-Man during this time.
Mm.
Yeah. So he just finished his career really. Like
I I have to say, I'm really shocked by his lack of reaction to her dying. Like, they interviewed him, and he was like, I hadn't spoken to her in like 6 or 7 years at this point by the time she dies, which I did not
yeah.
know. But he was just like, so, I'm really just upset for her family. Like, it was weird to me.
Yeah, but I also think it's like I think you have there is a certain level of distance you're gonna put up between like an interviewer asking you like a question and probably
Mm,
how you actually feel about the situation.
yeah,
I
that's
think at
true.
that point in his life he was probably like I need to give a professional answer to this.
Mm,
And I don't think like that necessarily is a reflection of how he felt. But
this is true.
but he also by that point like he got remarried. So like
Yeah, well, it says
actually
he
no,
remarries seven
he gets
years
married
after her
later. Yeah,
death.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
7 years after her death. And then I said, yeah, too, devotes most of his time to the Special Olympics. But Yeah, I was, like, shocked because, just from somebody who literally, like, even like we said, like, was actively going through a divorce and, like, still wanted to bring her into the fold and, like, really truly it seemed like cared so much about her, and again, that's his professional response, and also the interview seemed like it took him off guard. He was, like, standing on a lawn, like, I feel like someone
Mhm.
just caught him out of the blue. So, we never really know, at least based on this episode, how he truly felt about her passing because horrible, horrible tragedy. Again, this really gives Chris Candido in kind of a way where he dies in a car crash, and
Yeah,
his
he has a heart
wife
accident, yeah.
he
A heart attack and
his
then into a car accident,
which
sorry.
insane. So he and his wife are in the car, so driving in Florida, I think, and, like, he has a heart attack behind the wheel, crashes the car. I think she survives, but
Mhm.
he dies,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah. What a way to go.
Like, that is heinous.
Yep.
I
Yeah. It's just like like such a like way to, you know what I mean? For such a
again,
guy, for such a man, like
I just these tragic love stories, man. Like they're just like so how I
harrowing. Like how does like one couple go through so much?
swear, like I don't even know. Like to think like at one point it's like okay, like I've done my wrestling career. I'm done. I'm just living out my retirement. Just blah blah blah. Like whatever. Just hanging out with my wife, going for a Sunday drive, girl.
Mhm.
Heart attack, car crash, killed.
I know.
Devastating.
Mhm.
Devastating. And that is the tragic story of the Randy Macho Man Savage and Miss Elizabeth, the first lady of the WWE.
Yeah.
How insane, you guys.
How
Like,
insane. I know. Absolutely like just
I,
breakneck. Like
yeah, I mean, it's just the lives of these wrestlers really is. I'm so glad they ended up doing this series when they did
Mhm. Shout
because
out to
I just
Vice.
swear, thank Vice, honestly, shout out for everything. They do the best
Mhm.
shows. And I think these stories are so important to talk about because it's like these are people that like we watch every single day. They're doing the most insane stuff with their bodies, like their families.
And like it takes
Just
a toll.
it does.
Like it is not a like it's not a business you get into lightly because it is like when you're committing to that, like you're removing yourself from your family for months at a time. You're like putting yourself in situations where you're like prone to that lifestyle, that whole the rock and roll, you know,
Totally.
trashing hotel rooms, doing drugs, lots of things available to you. Like it can be a very like tumultuous life and was for a lot of people.
Yeah,
So
I mean, they have a whole series
a
about
whole
all of it.
series.
Yeah, so that is this edition of Nunu the sorry. That
Hello.
is that is this week's edition of the New to Wrestling After Dark podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed this insane roller coaster ride, and I
Oh,
am so
amen.
excited to get into whatever we get into next. Xavier kind of like reveals it to me as the week goes on, and then we
Mm-hmm,
get to
mm-hmm.
dive in.
I have
And
I have I have a couple episodes that I want to do, but I just want to time them well, I
I
guess.
appreciate your work. I really, really do.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so this episode will air after our uh pay-per-view
Regular neuter.
episode.
Yeah,
Yeah, our Thursday pay-per-view episode of the Fatal 4-Way, which was insane. So
absolutely
if you guys haven't listened to that
bonkers.
episode, please do. Which also we did get another comment on our last video from this series from somebody named Jason from Central New Jersey, which by the way, Jason, we are Jersey girls, just so you know.
Yes,
If
yes,
we
yes,
didn't
yes,
ever say
yes.
that, Xavier currently lives in the Philly area, but we
Mm-hmm.
are Jersey girls. Um and commented a really amazing comment talking about his relationship with wrestling, how his daughter who is now 16 is into wrestling since she was 9,
Mm-hmm.
and potentially maybe we'll watch this show together. My our unsolicited advice, not that you need any, is that I would also get into our other podcast because we're and watch the Attitude Era together alongside us. Like let's like,
Right,
all as
right,
a group
right.
together, hold hands and go through it because I'm seeing it for the first time, and if she would be seeing it for the first time, it'd be something like really engaging and interesting to discuss. And I know you mentioned she's into female female wrestlers. You can, enjoy the genesis of female wrestling in the WWE together, which we will eventually cover on this podcast or the
Definitely.
other podcast, which I'm so excited about.
I believe he made like no, just because he said his daughter was like, I guess, younger, or like just because we get into more kind of explicit topics on this show.
Yeah.
On that show, we watch an episode of Raw or a pay-per-view, and then we just discuss what happens. It is we don't really
Way
get
more
into the
PG.
tumultuous lifestyles so much as just kind of reviewing what's been presented in front of us and just kind of being silly and ridiculous about it.
Yeah.
So if that is a concern, any episode that says After Dark is going to be more adult in its nature and content. But any episode that is just a straight up new to wrestling podcast is just Kelsey enjoying some wrestling for the first time, while I rewatch some wrestling and just share my love for it while
Yeah.
budding a new one, you know?
Which, you guys can mirror if you decide to watch us there, like,
Exactly. And we'd love to hear
exactly.
about it. We'd love to hear about
Absolutely.
it.
And obviously, of course, you guys can watch this too. Just it's a little bit more rated R as opposed to PG/PG-13 like
Right.
the
Right,
other
right, right.
podcast. But thank you so much for commenting. I like your story, everything you shared was so sweet, and we're so grateful for everything you said. And we hope that you guys enjoy.
All right. And we will catch you on Thursday for another episode of the New to Wrestling podcast, and next Saturday for another episode of the New to Wrestling podcast After Dark.
We will see you there.
Bye.
Bye.